So when the Poco F3 first emerged roughly 9 months ago now, I hailed it as one of the best value smartphones around. And now that 9 months has trickled on by and 2021 is about to sod right off, nothing has really changed, to be honest. If you time it right, you can actually grab the Poco F3 for around 250-ish quid these days, and considering you get premium performance, a spooge-worthy media setup, and some pretty decent camera tech, that is an absolute bargain. Like, seriously, just go f***ing buy one. Now, I've been keeping close tabs on the Poco F3 these past few months, and now that the phone launches are finally starting to dry up for the year, I decided to slap my SIM back inside there and see if it's still just as good as I remember it. Or was I just pouring far too much single malt down my throat in a desperate bid to make it through yet another bloody lockdown? So here's my long-ish term Poco F3 review, and for more on the latest and greatest tech, please do subscribe and ding that notifications bell. Cheers! Now, the first aspect of the F3 that has definitely survived the test of time is that design. I adore the matte glass finish in pearly white, which only really gets proper greasy if you're handling this thing in between fistfuls of chips and battered sausage. You got Gorilla Glass 5 front and back as well, and the great news is it's definitely doing its job. The pre-installed screen protector here on the F3 came off pretty damn pronto, but not a single scratch or scuff anywhere on that display. It's a bit of a shame you've got stuff like this crossed out wheelie bin here on the back end, because it would be a neat and tidy finish otherwise, with remarkably restrained logo action from Poco. As well as this gorgeous white colour, the Poco F3 also launched in black and blue. Or else you can also grab it in this fresh new and very romantic sounding moonlight silver hue, which has got a very snazzy patterned design on it, and also unfortunately still that crossed out wheelie bin. And this mega-sized mobile feels good to clutch with its curves and contours, but it's also an absolute heifer at near 6.7 inches, weighing in at a very hefty 200 grams. So if you have grand aspirations of a smartphone that you can easily wield one-handed, well, you better have mitts like one of those freaky sensitive body part models. On the software side of things, the Poco F3's received a fair few OTA updates in the ensuing months, although it is still a wee bit behind when it comes to the Android security updates. We've still got the August patch on here, as we're about to struggle and crawl our way into December. So yeah, a few months behind, which to be fair is pretty standard for a Xiaomi blower. Xiaomi/Poco, now that Poco is technically left for any pedants out there. And if you're wondering when Android 12 is going to hit the Poco F3, well, there's been bugger all official word from Poco, but apparently a closed beta testing is underway in China, so hopefully won't be too long to wait. And if you are going to wait, may I recommend pouring yourself a pint of scotch and lining up every single episode of Last of the Summer Wine or something else that'll keep you going. And at least the MiUI launcher is bang up to date with version 12.5.6, otherwise known rather sexily as the Enhanced Edition, hitting the Poco F3 just this past month. This mostly gives the back end a bit of a kick in to smooth out the UI performance, which to be fair was already pretty good here on the Poco. Features wise, not too much has really changed here on the Poco F3 these past few months, so I won't spend much time banging on about it all. The UI can be tweaked so it's a mostly stock Android vibe, complete with the apps tray, Google Feed, yada yada, although the addition of that cheeky control center and other changes like the vertical recent apps menu still give MiUI its own identity. As do bonus features like the customizable always on display, the slightly cluttered but likeable gaming mode, and that video toolbox. And Poco phones blissfully aren't as bad as Xiaomi's own blows when it comes to the amount of crapware heaped on this thing before you even get a chance to boot it up, but I have completely eradicated most of the crud like TikTok and all of that sort of shenanigans, just to make the apps tray a bit more tidy more than anything else, because thankfully I haven't needed any extra storage space even after 9 months, because you've got 256 gigs of the stuff packed on this thing. At least you're doing my review model, you can also grab it in 128 gigs if you want to save a little bit of extra cash. I would say though, if you do shoot a lot of photos and video, maybe consider that 256 gig model, because there is bugger all microSD memory card support here. And I'm still enjoying the edge-mounted fingerprint sensor as well, which is definitely a preferable alternative to in-display scanners and impressively responsive given the size of the bloody thing. You've also got a bit of face recognition in backup as well, which again does its job nicely. Although it does sometimes work even when you're fully face masked up, got hats on and all sorts, so I'm not entirely sure quite how secure this method is. If I were you, I'd probably just stick with the fingerprint sensor. Now for under 300 quid, at least when it's discounted, the Poco F3 serves up an absolute blinder of a screen. This 6.67 inch AMOLED display isn't just really massive, it's also super bright and proper punchy. Yeah, smaller panels can pump out sharper looking images, but your pics and movies will hardly look pixelated here, while the top brightness makes for perfect clarity when the sun does actually poke his wee head out. You got strong contrast thanks to that OLED tech and the full HDR10 Plus support for streaming, while the ample display settings allow you to play around with the colour output until you're satisfied with what you're seeing. Personally, I was very happy with that vivid mode, especially when I was kicking back with a bit of anime action. And despite the fact that it is OLED technology, you do get 120Hz refresh support here on the Poco F3 as well, although it's not dynamic refresh, so we'll have to manually bump it back down to 60Hz if you want to preserve some battery life instead of getting that silky smooth experience. You do have a pair of stereo speakers here on the F3, although the balance is rather off. It's absolutely fine if you don't have any headphones to hand, of course. But what's more annoying is the fact that you don't get a headphone jack here on the Poco F3, so it is dongles or Bluetooth 5.1 all the way, and thankfully when I was streaming wirelessly to speakers like headphones, absolutely no worries at all. Now, one of the most impressive features of the Poco F3 at launch was the fact you got a Snapdragon 870 chipset bunged inside, back to my review model by 8 gigs of RAM. Not only does this add a bit of 5G support on top of a tasty bit of Wi-Fi 6 action, so you've got super nippy connectivity, but also means the Poco F3 can basically piss through any app out there. And yes, it is very good news for any gamers out there as well. The Adreno 650 GPU can keep up with even the most demanding Android fare like Genshin Impact. No worries, you can boost those detail levels up to the highest setting, keep it at 60 FPS, and you'll get a smooth frame rate throughout, even when things get pretty bloody intense. The Snapdragon 870 chipset does a pretty good job of staying cool under pressure as well, and you've also got some liquid cool tech packed into the Poco F3, bit of copper piping plus some graphite layer action. And what that all basically adds up to is, even after a couple of hours of smacking 10 bells out of these bloody stupid troll thingies, the Poco F3's arse end still stays nice and cool. As for the battery life of the Poco F3, well, sod all complaints whatsoever from me. In fact, if anything, it seems to have got better over the past few months after various updates compared with when I first originally reviewed it. So these days, usually, even after a pretty long, intensive day of lots of camera use and lots of other apps and plenty of audio streaming in the background as well, even when the screen was turned off, I still tend to get to bed with around 25% to 30% battery remaining. The only way I've found of killing it before I'm all tucked up with Teddy and I is by doing a good bit of Genshin Impact. Again, apart from that, it's absolutely fine. And if you do run out of charge, you need to fast charge it. Well, it's 33 watt wide charging, so not particularly nippy compared with some rivals, but again, not particularly lethargic. And yet, 9 months on, I am still happy with the Poco F3's camera tech as well. Its skills haven't really changed up much at all these past few months, admittedly, but that 48 megapixel primary sensor still spits out some good looking 12 meg pics in pretty much any kind of conditions. Even 9 months on, it's still one of the better mid-range mobiles for those optics, coping well when the light gets dim, even without having to rely on the night mode. It's probably just as well because that mode is generally ineffective. Living, breathing subjects are usually captured cleanly, even when they won't sit still, as long as that lighting is decent, otherwise, yeah, you can expect some fuzzy results. And that portrait mode is a good one as well, adding a good bit of flair to your photos when required. Meanwhile, the Poco's 8 megapixel ultra-wide angle snapper is nothing special, serving up the usual alternative viewpoint while also sacrificing some detail and tonal accuracy. Pretty standard fare. And then the final lens you got slapped on the arse end of the Poco F3 there is a 5 megapixel telemacro effort, which to be honest I just completely ignore. You got very few issues with the video recording at this price point as well. You can capture 4K footage with strong enough details so the picture looks good on your telly. As long as the lighting is alright, it does suffer a bit when you're shooting indoors in more ambient environments, while audio is also clear from all directions as long as it isn't too breezy. And you can swap to the ultra-wide angle lens if you want by dropping to full HD resolution, but definitely don't really bother. It just ain't a good time. And yes, yippee hooray, you've got a 20 megapixel selfie shooter, which is perfectly respectable as well, capturing all the sags and bags a little too easily. Skin tones look natural even in soft light or strong contrast, so the Poco F3 accurately makes me look like an exhausted apparition with decent portrait results on top. So that right there is my full in-depth re-review of the Poco F3 9 months on. And I gotta say, 9 months ago, I absolutely sung its praises, and rightfully so. And now that 2021 is almost sodded off, I still absolutely ruddy love this thing. Yeah, sure, it's got a couple of foibles. It's the typical sort of thing that generally impacts more premium smartphones though, like the lack of a headphone jack, the lack of expandable storage, stuff like that. And the fact that you do actually get a pretty premium experience out of this thing, but now for under 300 quid is just stunning. Yes, you could easily spend 3 times the amount and get slightly better camera tech, slightly upgraded performance, but honestly, this thing will do a job for even the most demanding users out there. So if you also had the Poco F3 stashed in your bag or your pants these last few months, and have you been enjoying it as much as I have? Well, it'd be great to hear your thoughts down in the comments below. Please do subscribe and ding that notifications bell for more on the latest and greatest gadgets they're coming to bring you some more long-term reviews and such forth, and have yourselves a bloody lovely rest of the week. Cheers everyone, love you.